And Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and more importantly, Credit Suisse, these banks, they threaten to unleash a set of events that can threaten global financial system. As we know, it's so much so that cryptos like Bitcoin and Ethereum are back in demand for their decentralized appeal. But can the problems plaguing these banks have an effect on you? Well, sadly, yes, it can happen. This report gives you insight into how you could be impacted. Take a look at the story.
The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and the looming crisis at Credit Suisse has investors worried. Stock markets around the world, including the Nifty 50, have plunged almost 10% since the collapse of SVB. If you live in the largest economy in the world, then you are probably reading headlines suggesting a recession may be impending now. But the more important impact may be on borrowing. Smaller banks are likely to tighten their lending standard to deal with heightened scrutiny from regulators. This is likely to impact demand for real estate that is still recovering from the impact of the pandemic. Bigger banks are also likely to benefit from the liquidity issues at smaller banks. Deposits in top banks such as Morgan Stanley, Citi, and Wells Fargo have gone up after the collapse of SVB. Given the current market conditions, big American banks are also likely to get stressed assets at discounted valuations, possibly giving them better returns in the long term. China, the world's second largest economy, is bound to feel the impact of the banking crisis too. Experts suggest the immediate impact of the banking crisis could be felt by China's growing tech sector. Chinese tech companies that rely on investments from foreign investors may face a funding crunch, given the situation unfolding due to the collapse of SVB. But this could also benefit China. Tech companies may be attracted to shift their operations to China, which provides a similar development infrastructure as Silicon Valley, but has a lower cost of acquiring talent. If you are in India, you are probably wondering if the collapse of these banks might affect you. While your deposits in banks may not be impacted directly, any market-linked investments could face severe volatility until the current crisis settles. The rupee could also weaken as FIIs dump banking stocks to trim their exposure to the sector. But it is the Indian startup ecosystem that could suffer the most due to a double whammy of a funding winter and liquidity issues due to the collapse of SVB. However, it's not all bad news. Crude oil prices have dropped to $75 per barrel levels, and that's some good news coming in for India, considering oil forms the majority of India's high import bill. Shifting focus to Switzerland, the European financial hub's reputation for banking has taken a hit due to the crisis at Credit Suisse. Just to put the scale of the crisis in perspective, the combined assets of UBS and Credit Suisse is 1.4 times the GDP of Switzerland. The country's economy relies heavily on providing a safe haven banking system, which is now threatened. That means GDP growth in Switzerland could be downgraded soon. The country's central bank is also considering using public money to bail out its second largest lender. That means public funds could face stress in the short term. Whether you live in the US, UK, China, or India, the threat of a banking crisis is real and could affect you if you are a global investor. But banks have also emerged out of several financial crises, including the 2008 housing bubble, making them the best investment destinations, especially during a crisis. Bureau Report, WION.
WION now available in your country. Download the app and get all the news on the move.